Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's NATO saying it has agreed on ways to deter Russia from deploying new medium-range nuclear missiles after the collapse of the INF Treaty. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says NATO's response will be measured and only involve conventional weapons. More in this report.
The collapse of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty by the US and Russia has become a matter of serious concern for major world powers. NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says new Russian missiles can hit European cities within minutes.
Russia has deployed the SSC-8 missile system. The new Russian missiles are nuclear capable, mobile, and hard to detect. They can reach European cities with only minutes of warning time.
Britain and Poland blame Russia for the treaty's collapse, but China criticized the US for leaving the accord. Its foreign ministry spokeswoman says the move shows Washington's ignorance of its international commitments.
The withdrawal is another negative move by the US to pursue unilateralism in disregard of its international commitments, aiming to shake off the bindings by itself and seek unilateral military and strategic advantages.
Germany has warned that Moscow and Washington's decision to scrap the treaty would have serious consequences for European security. Foreign Minister Heiko Maas says a failure to agree on rules for disarmament risks a new arms race.
Now, as the war continues in Yemen, 19 government soldiers have been killed in a suspected al-Qaeda attack on an army base in Yemen's southern Abyan province. Security officials say al-Qaeda gunmen stormed into the Al-Mahfad base and remained inside for hours before military reinforcements arrived. They say the attackers were later killed, while wounded soldiers were airlifted out by coalition forces. Al-Qaeda has not claimed responsibility for the attack so far. Now, this comes just a day after a missile attack by Houthi rebels and an unknown suicide bomber killed over 50 people in the city of Aden. Peace talks on Syria have concluded in Kazakhstan with a fresh call for a Syrian-led and owned political process. Iran, Turkey, Russia and representatives of the Syrian government and opposition took part in the Astana format dialogue. In a statement, they said stability in the Middle East could only be achieved by respecting Syria's sovereignty. The forum called on the United Nations and its agencies to enhance humanitarian assistance to the country. They also emphasized the need to help the safe and voluntary return of Syrian refugees and IDPs. The next round of talks on Syria will be held in Nur Sultan in October. Now, staying with Syria, and the government has agreed to a truce in the northwestern region of Idlib. State media says the ceasefire is conditional on the implementation of a buffer zone agreed by Turkey and Russia last year. The announcement came at the opening of the 13th round of international talks in Astana. Iran, Turkey and Russia, with representatives of the Syrian government and opposition, are taking part. Russian envoy to Syria, Alexander Lavrentiev, has welcomed the move and says rebels should now honor previous peace agreements. Idlib is the last major rebel bastion in Syria after 8 years of war. Now, in Sudan, the ruling military council has arrested 9 soldiers from the Rapid Support Forces over the killing of protesting students earlier this week. The Rapid Support Forces work under the ruling military council and have now been detained. More in this report.
The recent violence has put the ongoing talks between the military council and protesters at stake. Military spokesman Lieutenant General Shamseldin Kabashi said the governor and security council of the state will be held accountable for the killings.
Also, the Rapid Support Forces have formed a military committee to investigate the head of the Rapid Support Forces in El Obeid for the violations and the infringements that occurred by his forces.
Protest leaders have appreciated the action against those responsible for the killings.
We believe that these steps represent a correct start to stop the operations that occurred, causing the loss of life. We do not want any of our sons to be susceptible to anything similar to what happened.
The arrests come a day after 4 more people were shot dead at a protest rally in the city of Omdurman.
Now to Thailand, where 4 people were injured after 6 small bombs shook Bangkok during the morning rush hour. The explosions occurred as the city hosted a meeting of Southeast Asian foreign ministers. 6 bombs exploded at 3 different locations. 3 devices were detonated at a government complex. Police have arrested 2 suspects from Thailand's insurgency-hit southern region. They were detained after wires and ball bearings were found outside Bangkok's police headquarters. Now, South Korea claims North Korea has fired 2 more missiles into the East China Sea, the second such test launch this week. Seoul's Director of National Security Chung Eui-yong said the projectiles appeared to be a new short-range ballistic missile. Chung urged Pyongyang to halt the tests, saying they undermine efforts to ease military tensions in the Korean peninsula. Britain, France and Germany have urged North Korea to take steps to complete denuclearization.
We're concerned by the launches of ballistic missiles by North Korea in the past few days. We reiterate our condemnation of such launches, which are violations of UN Security Council resolutions. We urge North Korea to take concrete steps towards its complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization, and to engage in meaningful negotiations with the United States as agreed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un on 30 June.
Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has visited the land claimed by both Japan and Russia, but has drawn criticism from Tokyo. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshida Suga threatened to halt peace talks and joint economic activities with Russia over Medvedev's recent visit. More in this report.
The territorial row over the islands prevents a formal peace treaty between Russia and Japan. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga disapproved Medvedev's visit.
The Russian top official's visit to the Northern Territories is incompatible with Japan's stance on the territorial issue.
Medvedev traveled to the 4 Russian-held islands off Japan's northern region of Hokkaido, said he was unconcerned by Tokyo's protest.
We have said multiple times that Russian state officials visit Kuril Islands or any other territory of our country without getting approval from other states, even given our friendly attitude and our wish to develop friendly ties. Moreover, the more of those strong feelings on part of Japan are manifested, the more reasons for Russian officials to come here. And naturally, that's what we will do.
Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested that Moscow and Tokyo should sign a peace treaty by the end of the year without any preconditions. But Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe rejected the offer.
Now, US President Donald Trump says he stands by his offer to mediate the Kashmir dispute between Pakistan and India. Calling Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan a fantastic person, Trump said it was up to India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to take the next step. Trump said he spoke frankly over the proposal with Khan in Washington and Modi at the G20 summit. And he went on to say both leaders can get along very well. The US president first publicly made the offer during his meeting with Khan last month, saying Modi had asked him to mediate the Kashmir dispute. Modi has since backtracked from the statement after coming under fire in India over his request for Trump's mediation. Pakistan's military chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa says his country will play its part for peace in Afghanistan. Meeting the general in Rawalpindi, US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says Pakistan has wholeheartedly supported the Afghan peace process. He went on to say that other countries should also follow Pakistan's role in the peace talks. On Thursday, Khalilzad met Prime Minister Imran Khan to brief him about recent rounds of talks with the Taliban in Doha. Now, over in the United Kingdom, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservatives have suffered a major loss at a parliamentary by-election in Wales. The loss to the pro-EU Liberal Democrats cuts the Tory majority in the House of Commons to 1 seat. Jane Dodds, the Welsh Liberal Democrats leader, won by more than 1,400 votes over Conservative incumbent Chris Davies. This makes the government vulnerable to a vote of no confidence that might trigger a general election. It also puts Johnson's plan to leave the EU on October 31st with or without a deal under jeopardy. In her victory speech, Dodds promised to stop the new Prime Minister from jeopardising the UK's future.
So my very first act as your MP when I arrive in Westminster will be to find Mr. Boris Johnson wherever he's hiding and tell him loud and clear, stop playing with the future of our communities and rule out a no-deal Brexit now.
Bank of Finland chief Olli Rehn has withdrawn from the race to be the EU's pick to lead the International Monetary Fund. His departure leaves former Dutch Finance Minister Jeroen Dijsselbloem and Bulgaria's Kristalina Georgieva in the contest. The bloc will vote today to choose a consensus candidate. Earlier, EU members extended Thursday's deadline so Britain can put forward its candidate, but it failed to come up with a name on time. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire is leading the process to select a European candidate. India's Supreme Court says mediation has failed to bring about a settlement in the Ayodhya land dispute case. It's now ordered a series of day-to-day hearings regarding the case, which will commence from August 6. Indus News has this report.
The destruction of the Mughal-era Babri Mosque in 1992 triggered one of the worst episodes of sectarian violence in India's post-partition history. 2,000 people died in the riots that followed. Hindu radicals claim the mosque stood on the birthplace of their god, King Rama. A land dispute over the contested holy site followed, fueling tensions between Hindus and Muslims.
We welcome whatever the Honorable Supreme Court has said in the matter of Babri Masjid Ayodhya case.
The Hindu Mahasabha's legal team has welcomed the Supreme Court's move.
Today, Supreme Court has said that we'll hear the matter on day-to-day basis from 6th of August. Supreme Court has further directed that suit number 3, which is of Nirmohi Akhada, and suit number 5, which is of Ramlala Virajman, will be taken up first. And that's why that's a very good sign for all of us.
The development comes at a time of increased ethnic strife in the country. The rise of the BJP, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, coincided with increased anti-Muslim sentiment. Muslims make up 14% of India's population of 1.3 billion.
Now, the President-elect of the European Commission has proposed a new pact on migration and asylum seekers. Ursula von der Leyen met Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte in Italy. EC President Leyen and Prime Minister Conte discussed migration and overcoming political division. She says migration is inherent in a globalized world and it will not go away. Leyen went on to say that Europe needs a new kind of burden-sharing framework with countries like Italy, Greece and Spain. These countries are geographically more open to migration.
Especially when it comes to burden sharing. Yes, indeed, I think we need a new kind of burden sharing. And I'm aware of the fact that countries like Italy, like Greece, like Spain are in an exposed geographical position.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has struggled to contain an Ebola outbreak for the past 12 months. Over 1,800 people have already died due to the disease. More in this report.
The DRC is currently dealing with over 2,600 Ebola cases. 3 out of 10 patients are children.
Colleagues and communities on the ground are fighting the outbreak tirelessly, but we need desperately international community to back us up.
On Thursday, Rwanda sealed its border with the city of Goma for 8 hours, fearing that the outbreak would spill over across the border. The World Health Organization has asked local communities to put up a united front against the epidemic.
I think that after over 1,800 deaths, it is extremely important that people look at reality. Today, if we have been able to make progress in Butembo and Katwa, it is because the population has taken ownership of the answer. People who have lost family members will never say that Ebola does not exist here.
The World Health Organization says Goma could become a gateway for Ebola to spread to the rest of the world. In late July, the WHO also declared the epidemic a public health emergency of international concern. This is a rare designation used only for the gravest outbreak.
Bangladesh is struggling with the worst dengue outbreak in its history. The disease is transmitted through mosquitoes and has claimed 50 lives in just 1 month. Now over 1,400 people have been diagnosed with the fever in just 1 day. Indus News has this report.
Dengue is common in South Asia, especially during the monsoon season. With early detection and proper medical care, the disease proves fatal in less than 1% of cases. But Bangladesh is struggling to keep up with the rate at which dengue is spreading.
Dengue outbreak in this season and everywhere in Bangladesh, especially in Dhaka. But in this year, this number is increasing and we had a lot of patients in this season. And last week, we are overburdened with the dengue patient in this season.
Officials from Dhaka have drawn criticism for failing to contain the outbreak and causing panic.
My baby has been suffering from dengue for the last 6 days and was admitted to this hospital. Her mother was also admitted here, but she died yesterday. The government has no control over this disease. Many patients have died from dengue fever, and I blame the government for these deaths.
Many countries in Asia are facing a surge in mosquito-borne illnesses this year, raising fears of a potential global health emergency. Scientists blame climate change for the spike in mosquito-borne diseases in the continent.
Now, when you think of a church or a cathedral, you're probably thinking of a nice, peaceful, tranquil atmosphere. But the Rochester Cathedral in Kent is somewhat different. The church's entrance and seating area have been turned into a mini golf course. More in this report.
Churches haven't changed much over the centuries, but Reverend Matthew Rushton has taken a radical new approach to attracting youth to his faith. He has turned his cathedral's entrance into a mini golf course, saying this will spark interest in Christianity.
Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury said recently that if you can't have fun in cathedrals, then you don't know what fun is, and he's absolutely right. So partly this is about people having fun in the cathedral, getting people perhaps who haven't been here before to come into the cathedral, but it also has a serious educational purpose as well.
There has been a mixed reaction to Reverend Matthew Rushton's approach. Traditionalists have criticized the move via Twitter, saying it violates the sanctity of the cathedral. Others say the mini golf course makes the church more inviting.
They are running around having an absolute brilliant time. I think they're kind of quite shocked not to see all the chairs in here as normal when we're coming down, and it doesn't feel like sort of dingy to them, whereas normally when we're down here to them it's quite cold and not inviting. So today they're absolutely enjoying it.
The mini golf course is not a permanent feature and will only be around until September the 1st. Whether kids will still enjoy coming to the church remains to be seen.
Now, Lithuania has witnessed a surge in tourism since the new miniseries Chernobyl has aired on American TV channel HBO. But it's also reopened old wounds suffered during Lithuanians' time as part of the Soviet Union. More in this report.
Chernobyl is based on one of the world's worst nuclear accidents at a plant in Ukraine. Many scenes were filmed in Lithuania's Ignalina nuclear power plant, which has been decommissioned since 2009. The series revived the tourism industry in the Baltic country, but also brought back some bad memories.
My main health problems were the thyroid gland, high blood pressure. My teeth also started falling out. Not all of them, but I could take them out myself. No doctor needed.
After the Chernobyl disaster, Soviet leadership sent an estimated 7,000 Lithuanians to take part in the cleanup effort. Surviving workers are still struggling against health issues linked to the cleanup. They say their case still needs to be addressed by the government.
We still believe that this plan shouldn't exist, but we will do the utmost in order to make sure that it will be as less as possible detrimental.
For now, the Lithuanian government is preoccupied with another nuclear power-related worry. Moscow is building a nuclear plant near the country's shared border, which poses a threat to Lithuania's safety and national security.
Now let's look at some of the top business stories around the world, and we start with the stock markets. And Wall Street stocks sank to a one-month low after an escalation in the US-China trade war. President Donald Trump's announcement of imposing additional tariffs on Chinese goods reverted last month's gains, with the Dow Jones losing 200 points. The S&P 500 slipped about 1%, while the Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.5%. A slow job growth in July also fueled fears of an economic slowdown. Beijing says the US decision to impose more tariffs on Chinese exports is neither a constructive nor correct way to resolve their trade problems. Now, this comes after President Donald Trump announced an extra 10% tariff on $300 billion worth of Chinese products. Speaking in Thailand, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the higher tariffs are a step in the wrong direction. The levy is an addition to the 25% already imposed since last year. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank say the trade war between the world's top two economies has slowed down global economic growth. Now it seems we have another dispute between South Korea and Japan, which now has dropped it from its list of favoured trade partners, mirroring a decision taken by Tokyo earlier today. The move has rattled the electronics industry because it threatens the global microchip supply chain. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa criticised Japan's decision at the ASEAN summit in Bangkok. Seoul has summoned the Japanese ambassador to protect it against Tokyo's latest export curbs. Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Hyung-chong has called Japan's move a public humiliation. South Korean makers of display panels and memory chips stand to be worst hit by Tokyo's measures. Tensions have now escalated after a South Korean court ordered Japanese firms to pay compensation for using forced Korean labor between 1910 and 1945. What's the weather? Well, it's 31 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's the news for now, but I'll be back on the top of the hour with the headlines, so do stay with us. Bye-bye.